Michael and Middleton here with Chapter 7 of my allegorical fiction novel, The Great Deep. I'll give you a second here to pause and get a preview from the back cover. If you haven't seen any of the other videos, just follow this link to the playlist Good Books on my YouTube channel, and the other chapters are available there. I'll include links in the descriptions to all my books, as well as the benefit, the charity that all the sales of any of my books benefit. Chapter 7. William awoke on Saturday morning to the sounds of thunder and heavy rain. The storm, which had crept in the evening before, had slowly intensified throughout the night. Thick black clouds now hung low in the sky, and a constant reglazing of rain obscured the view out of his window. As William braced himself to sit up, he felt the wet blanket. Momentarily confused, he sat up and took note of a small stream of water creeping across the wide window pane, over the edge, and down the wall to his bed. He had mistakenly left his bedroom window slightly ajar the previous evening. William grimaced and sighed and jumped out of bed. A wet bed was not the way that any self-respecting preteen wished to begin the day. He pulled his bed out about a foot from the wall, slid behind it, and secured the window. He then felt the blanket again to see just how wet it was. Surmising that it would probably air dry within a few hours, he pulled it off his bed and spread it out flat on the floor in his room. He reconsidered and decided to drape it from the edge of the pool table out in the game room instead, guessing that it would probably dry faster hanging there than lying flat on the floor. He picked the blanket up and carried it out to the game room. Making sure that only the dry part of the blanket would come into contact with the pool table, he draped the wet side over the edge. Finally, he selected a couple of heavy books from the shelf and weighted the blanket with them to keep it from slipping and falling onto the floor. William then returned to his room. Noting that the sheets on his bed were only slightly damp, he untucked them on the wall side of the bed and allowed them to drape over the edge. That should do, he said to himself. With this unpleasantness behind him, William walked to the bathroom and got ready for the day. Noting the overstuffed condition of his laundry bag, he took it with him to drop off at the laundry room as he headed for the kitchen. As William approached the kitchen, dragging the laundry bag behind him, he noticed his mother at the kitchen sink washing an apple. "Oh, good morning, Mom," he said as he entered the kitchen. "Good morning, sweetie," Teresa replied. "What you got there?" she asked, looking down at the floor behind him. "Oh, laundry," William replied. Teresa stepped forward, extending one hand. "I'll take that, honey. Thanks." As she spoke, William noticed her gaze shift from him to the dining room behind him. "Oh my, it looks like I need to dust mop later on. Maybe after I get the laundry started." William turned around and glanced at the hardwood floor of the dining room. There was a clear, distinct swath of clean floor where he had dragged the laundry bag across the room. This extended beyond the dining room and on into the main room of the house, which also had a wood floor. Teresa took a bite of her apple as she took the bag from William and carried it to the laundry room. With a fair degree of effort, she swung it high into the air and plopped it on top of the washing machine. She took another bite of her apple and returned to the kitchen. William was standing at the counter next to the refrigerator, pouring milk on a bowl of cereal. Sliding open a drawer, he retrieved a spoon. He then screwed the cap back onto the milk and turned to the refrigerator, reaching for the handle. "I'll leave that out, honey," Teresa interrupted. "I'm going to use it too." William set the milk down on the counter and carried his cereal to the small table by the kitchen window with the blue curtains. He sat down and began to eat. Teresa took a ceramic mug from the cupboard and filled it with coffee. She then poured in a spot of milk and pulled a spoon from the silverware drawer. She spooned in a little bit of sugar and stirred the caramel-colored liquid. Taking a sip and finding it to her liking, she removed the spoon and set it in the sink. "Oh, William," she began as she opened the refrigerator and removed a flat of eggs. "Make sure you stick around after you finish your chores." "How come?" questioned William. "We're having guests for lunch," Teresa explained, "and Grandma wanted you to help her make some bagels." "Bagels?" asked William. "Yep," Teresa replied. "There's a new recipe she ran across. She wanted you to help her try it out." "I'd offered to help her out, but you know me, I burn chocolate milk," she chuckled. Feeling a little mischievous, William quipped, "But cooking is women's work." As her head whipped around, a crimson flare lit up Teresa's earlobes. This reflex quickly gave way to a knowing grin. "Nice try, mister." She picked up a spatula and shook it at him. "Finish your breakfast and get to your chores, or I'll show you women's work." William grinned as he took his last bite of cereal. He mockingly shielded himself with one hand as he dropped the bowl and spoon into the sink next to his mother. "Don't beat me, Ma," he jested. "Ow, hey!" He skittered away to the utility room as Teresa smacked him on the butt with the flat side of the spatula. "You'd better wear your raincoat," Teresa called out after him. "It's still coming down pretty heavy out there." William took full advantage of this opportunity to get in the last word. Just before he let the outside door close behind him, he called back, "Yes, Mother Teresa." After William had finished feeding the chickens and collecting the eggs, he returned to the utility room. Carrying the day's collection of eggs, he stored them and performed the egg rotation before removing his boots and raincoat. He then set his boots in the corner of the room and hung the raincoat up to dry. Pausing at the kitchen doorway, he was relieved to hear his mother's typewriter pecking away upstairs. His last word would hold up for now. The house was so quiet that he was startled when he entered the kitchen and saw his grandma sitting at the table to his left. "Oh, good morning, boy," Mary said. "I didn't mean to scare you." "Oh, Grandma, I didn't expect to see you there," William began. "I mean, it's just so quiet in here today and all." A long peal of thunder rumbled in the distance. "Well, when you got such a sweet song going on out there, there's no sense in drowning it out with a bunch of noise," Mary replied. There was another rumbling of thunder as a sudden gust of wind ruffled the blue curtains. Yep, despite man's best efforts, God still makes the sweetest music. From somewhere in the distance, a hawk's shrill cry echoed across the pasture. Several seconds of soft melody passed before the spell was broken. "Well, anyway, you ready to bake, boy?" Mary asked. "I've already got most of the stuff laid out on the counter over there." She motioned to the far counter to the right of the kitchen sink. "Sure, Grandma," William replied. "What kind of bagels are we making?" "Oh, it's kind of a Mediterranean recipe," she answered. "It's got sun-dried tomatoes and basil and stuff like that. It sounded like it'd go really well with the soup I'm serving for lunch." As they walked to the counter together, William asked, "What do you want me to do?" Mary answered, "Well, I've already mixed the dry ingredients, the flour, salt, the sun-dried tomatoes, basil, oregano. Could you mix up the yeast?" Okay," William hesitantly replied. "It's the stuff in that paper packet there," she explained. "Just mix in about a cup of lukewarm water. Lukewarm, not hot." William filled a measuring cup with lukewarm water from the sink. He then picked up the packet of dry yeast and tore open one end. He dumped the contents into the water and stirred it gently with a spoon. "Now add a little bit of sugar," Mary instructed. William added about a teaspoon of sugar and stirred once more. "That's fine, boy. Just set it aside for a bit." William pushed the mixture to the back of the counter. "Do you know how to separate eggs?" Mary asked. William joked. "Tell nasty rumors about the other egg?" Mary laughed so hard that she got lightheaded. "Oh, don't do that to your poor old granny," she said as she caught her breath. She then proceeded to demonstrate the technique for separating eggs for William. He caught on quickly and did the others she had laid out. Mary explained, "We're going to use the whites mixed with a little bit of milk to glaze the bagels before we broil them." "Broil?" William asked. "I thought you baked them." "Well, actually, you bake them first, then boil them, then broil them to finish them off," Mary explained as she added milk, water, and the yeast mixture to the dry ingredients. She pinched and mashed and folded all the ingredients together with her strong hands in order to form a sticky dough. It was a little too wet, so she added a handful of flour. She mixed and folded the dough in on itself again until it pulled away freely from the side of the mixing bowl. You have to cook them 3 times? William asked, wide-eyed. Mary spread a thin coating of flour on the countertop as she explained. Well, you just bake them until they're about half done. Then you boil them. That's what makes them chewy. Then you glaze the tops with the egg whites and broil them to finish them off. She pulled the dough from the bowl and set it on the flour-covered portion of the counter. After kneading it several times, she returned it to the bowl, which she then covered with a towel. Now we gotta let it rise for a while, she concluded. Are they going to be ready for lunch? William inquired. Sure, no problem, Mary assured him. I'll turn the stove on to preheat in just a little bit here. When we start to bake them, I'll turn the water on to boil, and while they're boiling, I'll switch the stove over to broil. It's all in the organization, boy. How long do they have to rise? William asked. Oh, only about an hour, maybe a bit longer, Mary replied thoughtfully. I'll call you when it's time to form the bagels. Okay, thanks. I'll go do something in the game room, William concluded. Maybe I'll check out that big box in the corner. Oh my, yes, Mary interrupted. You should enjoy that. It's full up with toys your daddy and his brothers and sisters played with when they were young. Really? Wow, William inquired, wide-eyed again. Yep, Mary concluded. I had them all stored away until a few weeks ago. I decided to bring them out and put them in that old trunk for you. You should really enjoy looking through all those old treasures. They really made some quality stuff back then, not like the mindless junk they turn out nowadays. William walked back to the game room and pulled the large black trunk away from the wall. He uncoupled the latch and lifted the lid. Wow, cool, he repeated over and over as he sorted through the childhood dreams of another era. After a little better than an hour had passed, Mary poked her head into the game room. You ready to make bagels? She asked. William returned the miscellaneous toys to the box, closed the lid, and followed her out to the kitchen. She showed him how to form the bagels. You just pinch off a big glob about this big, she began. Then roll it out kind of like this. That's right. Now, she continued, pinch the ends together to make a bagel. Good. Now put it on the cookie sheet over there. No, not that close. Spread it out a little bit. That's better. Do we stick them in the oven now? William asked. Well, not quite, Mary replied. You gotta let them rise again for just maybe half an hour or so. We can clean up the mess while we're waiting. They cleaned up the kitchen as they waited for the bagels to rise again. He then slid them into the oven and turned the water on to boil. When the bagels were done baking, she dropped a few of them at a time into the boiling water to cook for a minute or two. She and William then placed the bagels onto the cookie sheets again, patted them dry with paper towels, and brushed on the egg white glaze. A couple of minutes under the broiler for each sheet of bagels finished off the process. Man, that's a lot of work for a bagel, William declared, as he removed the last batch from the broiler to cool. Well, I can tell you that they're going to be worth it, Mary replied as she sniffed the delicious aroma. What kind of soup are we going to have with these? William asked. It's kind of a minestrone, Mary replied. I added some diced garlic and I used lamb instead of beef. Changed around a couple other things, too. If you want to taste, it's keeping warm in the crock pot over there. Just then, Teresa entered the room. Oh, my goodness, she said. It smells terrific in here. Thanks, dear, Mary replied. The boy here was quite a help. I think he kind of enjoyed it, too. Well, yeah, kinda, William admitted. Where's Dad today? He asked. Teresa replied, Oh, he's off reading somewhere. In this big old house, it's hard to keep track of him. With this delicious smell wafting through the house, though, I'm sure he'll be showing up again soon. Moments later, the doorbell rang. Teresa began to head for the front door, but paused as she heard Jacob bounding down the stairs. Goodness, sounds like a herd of elephants falling down the stairs. She shook her head and continued on to the front door. Mary turned to William as she opened a cupboard door. If you could take these out to the table for me, she began. I'll get the table set where you go out and join your folks. There's somebody out there that I'm sure you'd like to meet. She winked at William as he took a stack of plates and bowls from her hand. Uncomfortable with the obviously veiled meaning of the wink, William walked out to the dining room and set the pile of dishes on the table. He then hesitantly continued on to the front room. There's our boy, Jacob said as William entered the room. There on the couch in front of the fireplace, William saw a man about his dad's age, with blondish-brown hair and a slender mustache. Seated next to him was a tall, slender woman with auburn hair. William remembered her from his first egg delivery. Oh no, he thought. No, please. William, I'd like you to meet Mr. and Mrs. Stewart, Jacob continued. They live just down the road. Oh yes, we've met, Mrs. Stewart recalled. Say, we'll be ready for more eggs in a day or two. She addressed William directly now. Okay, sure, William said as he nervously glanced around the large open room. He began weakly. He was interrupted by Mr. Stewart. Sherry, come out here, please. In short order, Sharon Stewart emerged from the game room. Her face was covered with a knowing grin, which betrayed the fact that she held leverage over William's head. Hi, Billy, she snipped. Mr. Stewart paused slightly. Oh, have you two met? He asked. Oh yeah, we met, Sharon replied. The tone in her voice and the gleam in her eye threatened to tell the whole story of their previous encounter. How's your, Fine, just fine. William coldly bit off the words as he glared hard at her. He almost wished that he had a rock in hand or within reach. Well, that's nice, Mrs. Stewart chimed in. Apparently the adults were unaware of the prepubescent tension permeating the room. Why don't you two run along and play until lunch is ready? But, William began, I've got to help Grandma set the table. Yeah, that's it. Oh, that's all right. I'll help her finish up, sweetie, Teresa interjected. Why don't you go play pool or something for a few minutes? William began to protest again, but knew that it would be fruitless. He sighed and relented. Fine. He set his jaw and marched stiffly to the game room, with Sharon skipping along lightly behind him. The blanket from William's bed still hung from the pool table. He casually felt the hanging edge. It was almost completely dry. The game's 8-ball, William declared as he removed the blanket from the table and tossed it into his room. He set aside the books he'd used to hold the blanket in place and then gathered the balls, assembling them neatly in the triangular rack at the head of the table. You know how to play? He asked. Sure do, Sharon replied. I play with my dad sometimes. William removed the rack and consented to letting her break. He assumed that she wasn't very good. After all, she was a girl. If nothing went down on the break, the balls would be scattered and he would have the advantage. Crack! Thump! 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 William scowled as 2 balls, both of them stripes, went in on the break. He thought for a moment that he would get lucky as the cue ball rolled directly towards the corner pocket. Scratch on the break, automatic loss. This flicker of hope dissipated, however, as the cue ball stopped just short of the pocket. A measure of satisfaction returned as Sharon missed her next shot. A small triumph, the corner of William's mouth curved upward slightly. He circled the table as Sharon stepped back. Taking just a little too long to pick out an obvious shot, he finally pointed with the end of his stick and declared, 7 in the side. The maroon sphere obediently dropped into the side pocket, leaving the cue ball set up for a cross-corner shot on the 3. William called his second shot and made that one as well. He was feeling pretty confident now. He called a long rail shot on the 6 ball for his third attempt. This was the most difficult kind of shot for him, but he was fairly confident that he could make this one. The cue ball was just far enough away from the rail to give him a little bit of an angle. Just don't hit it too hard, he thought. Hit it too hard and it'll come off the rail. He took a deep breath, letting it out slowly as he placed his front hand. He eyed the dark green 6 ball, trying to gauge just exactly where to make the cue ball strike it so that it would slide smoothly along the rail to the corner pocket at the other end of the table. Confident that he had sighted the magic spot, he tested the slide of his stick, paused slightly, and took one smooth stroke at the cue ball. Unconsciously, he tried to influence the ball's path with his body language, much as a bowler does. Come on, come on, come on, he pled under his breath. It was a beautiful shot. Almost. The 6 ball rolled straight and true down the near rail, heading directly for the corner pocket. He hadn't put quite enough on it, however, and it came to rest about 1/4 inch from dropping in. No, no, he moaned. "Oh, you got robbed," Sharon grinned. 9-11 combo in the corner, she pertly declared. She'd obviously been pondering the shot while William played. She quickly lined the shot up and cleared the 11 ball from the table. She missed her next shot, however, and it was William's turn again. 6 in the corner, William confidently proclaimed as he stepped forward. He lined up the shot and easily made it. 4 in the side. He made that shot as well. The next shot was a little more difficult, another long rail shot. William tried his best to find a different shot, but not knowing how to jump the cue ball, this was the only one open to him. He called it and then spent a good 30 seconds studying the shot. He took a deep breath, held it, and rammed the cue ball. To his great relief, he made it. "Yes, yes, yes," he danced with glee. "Silly Billy," Sharon muddled softly. William ignored her and lined up the next shot. He now only had 2 balls left to make, plus the 8 ball. "Hey, William," Teresa called. "Didn't you hear me?" He hadn't. "It's lunchtime. Wash up." William was caught off guard. "No, but, Mom, I—" "Now, young man," Teresa cut short his begging. "But," he pled, "I've only got—" "Come on, Sharon," Teresa cut him short again. "I'll show you where you can wash up." Sharon threw a spiteful grin in William's direction and replied, "Yes, ma'am." William's bubble was burst. It was no use trying the shot now. Even if he made it, Sharon wouldn't believe him. "Dang it," he muttered under his breath. He dropped his stick onto the table and walked into the bathroom to wash his hands. During lunch, Mr. and Mrs. Stewart commented on how good the food was. "Thank you so much," Mary replied. "William here made the bagels." "Really?" Mrs. Stewart asked. "Well, I helped anyway," William sheepishly replied. Mrs. Stewart leaned in towards her daughter and feigned a whisper. "Handsome, and he can cook." Sharon grinned at William and mockingly winked. William's face blushed redder than his mother's hair. When everyone was done eating, William helped his grandma clear the table. He was about to slink away to his room when his dad intercepted him. "Hey, sport, your mom and I are going to play cards with the Stewarts for a while. Why don't you and Sharon go play outside? The rain stopped and it seems to be clearing up. Why don't you show her around the ranch?" William was about to protest when Sharon interjected. "Want to go fishing?" she asked slyly. William glared at her coldly. "Hey, why don't you show her the fort?" Jacob asked. "I bet she'd like to see that." "What's the fort?" Sharon asked. William cut off his father's response. "Oh, I would, Dad, but it's kind of far for her to walk." "Oh, that's okay. I rode my bike over," Sharon said. "Great, now I'm trapped," William thought. "Well, okay then, fine." William was very disappointed. He'd wanted to take a hammer and chisel back to the cave and see if he could break through the hollow spot that he'd discovered. There was no way that he was about to let Sharon Stewart in on that cool of a secret, though. He decided that he would pack his stuff up that evening and leave early the next day. "If I don't let her in on the crack or the hollow spot," he thought, "hopefully she'll get bored quickly and won't want to go back there again. Maybe I could even pretend not to be able to find it." He then realized that wouldn't work. "Nah, Dad knows I've been back there already." "Come on," he said. "My bike's out back." Sharon replied, "Mine's in front. I'll meet you out back in a minute." She slipped through the front door as William headed towards the back door via the kitchen. He walked through the utility room and opened the door leading outside after pausing to put on his shoes. The rain had stopped and there was a hint of a rainbow high in the sky. He shut the door behind him and walked over to his bicycle. Just then Sharon rounded the corner of the house and pedaled up beside him. She stopped and got off her bicycle. "So, which way do we go?" she asked. William nodded towards the distant hill and began walking. Sharon followed. "It's on the other side of that," he said. "We should walk the bikes until we got across the fence." "How'd we get through the fence?" she asked. "Oh, there's a gate a ways down there," William replied. He paused and then snidely asked, "Are you sure that girly bike of yours can make it?" "Look, boy," she began, "I've ridden this bike on rougher ground than you've got here. I'm more worried about your scrawny little chicken legs making it." "Yeah, whatever," was the best comeback William could muster. "Silly Billy," Sharon retorted. They walked in silence the rest of the way to the gate. William opened the gate and latched it again after they had both passed through. The path leading to the distant hill was only wide enough for one bike, so Sharon followed him back. The recent rainfall made the trek a little slower than the first time William had gone to the fort, as mud caked on their tires. When they reached the top of the hill, William slowly stepped down and stepped off of his bike. Sharon followed suit. "It's a little steep on the way down, and with the rain and all," he began. "Yeah, okay," she agreed. They left their bikes on top of the hill and walked down the far side. William looked around a little bit when they reached the bottom. Something was different, but he couldn't tell what. "It's just the rain, I guess," he thought. When they reached the large bush that obscured the cave entrance, William stuck his arm out. "Careful," he warned. "It's just around here." He stepped carefully around the bush and stopped at the edge of the chasm. "Cool," Sharon said. "How big is it?" Wanting to tame her enthusiasm, William replied, "Oh, it's just a little thing." "Ready to head back?" "No way, I want to have a look around," she replied. Sharon began to work her way through the mouth and down into the cave. William hit his head on the way in, but squinted hard and kept himself from crying out. He bit his lip and rubbed his head until the pain passed. Several feet into the cave, they both paused while their eyes adjusted to the dimness. They then continued down into the cave until they reached the floor. William nonchalantly pointed out the couch and the card table. Noticing the candles, Sharon picked one up. She retrieved a match from the jar on the table and used it to light the candle. She held the candle high in the air with one hand and casually looked around for a few minutes. William was encouraged that she seemed to be getting bored quickly. "Cool," she said rather flatly. "Well, I guess we better be getting back." "Yes," William thought. Sharon blew out the candle and set it back on the table. Together, she and William returned to the house. William parked his bike and went to his room to do some reading, while Sharon paged through some magazines out in the front room. After about half an hour, the Stewarts left for home. William found his list of supplies for exploring the cave the next day and collected them before dinner. He stuffed everything into a small backpack and set it on top of his dresser. They had a chicken and rice dinner for dinner that night, along with broiled tomatoes, topped with grated cheese. William wasn't used to this fancy cooking yet, and ate more than he could ever remember eating before. "Looks like you're beginning to grow into your daddy's appetite," Mary commented. After helping with the dinner cleanup, William played a couple of solo games of pool. He then read another chapter of The Beast Within before changing for bed. It was a clear, starry night with a cool breeze, so he opened his window a crack before retrieving his blanket and making his bed. He then pushed the bed back into place against the wall and crawled under the top covers. Although he was an early riser by nature, he wanted to be sure to be up early for his caving expedition the next day, so he set the alarm on his clock. He then grew still and faded off to sleep.